Your ears do not deceive you. You have just entered the Cryptid Creator Corner brought to you by your friends at Comic Book Yeti. So without further ado, let's get on to the interview.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Let's Talk Shop, my sidecar companion to the normal Cryptid Creator Corner podcast, where we talk to the people in the trenches selling you the books that you love. This marks the first of hopefully many opportunities to take the show beyond our own shores. And as the standard formatting, I ask creators who have been on the show which shops they recommend. So in this case, I asked artist PJ Holden when we talked about his book Dark Pyramid a little bit earlier in the spring. PJ said to look no further than his local Belfast comics hangout, Heroes and Coffee. So it is my pleasure to introduce owner Alan Taylor on with me today. Alan, welcome. Have you recovered yet from last week's free comic book day festivities?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on.
Yeah.
I'll assume that was a misquote from PJ. We're called Coffee and Heroes as opposed to Heroes and Coffee, but it's all good.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
That was my bad.
it's all good. The amount of people who call us comics and coffee, coffee and comic, it's fine. It's all good. As long as they know where the store is, we're all good. Yeah, free comic book day was crazy. It surprises me every single year just how busy it is. I have to hire extra staff. We order in every single title possible. We do lots of discounts. So yeah, we open an hour earlier for it just to deal with the demand. So it's a crazy day, but it's also the kind of day that as a store, it gives you a really good feeling to know so many people want to come to your store. They know about you, the word is spreading, and that hopefully sets you up for a good year for the rest of the year. So yeah, it was busy. It was busy to say the least.
Do you guys do a lot of cosplay or anything for it, or?
We don't specifically know. It's an interesting thing with our store. So we are 100% these days about the books. We don't branch out much from
Okay.
that. When we first opened, we used to do lots of merchandise and pop vinyls and different things. And I found very quickly that's not where my passion lies. I'm a born and bred comic reader. I love the industry. I love the creators. I love the breadth of storytelling across it all. So very quickly we've become over time. I've brought the amount of merchandise down and down and down. I think part of that as well is you can't compete with bigger companies. If HMV are selling pop vinyls these days, and other local stores are selling them who aren't even really attributed with the comic industry, but people come to us because we specialize in the comic side of things. They come for our knowledge, our passion, and yeah. So when it comes to Free Comic Book Day, it's a weird thing in a way. We don't do a lot of bells and whistles, but we have every single free comic book title. We order hundreds of each. We do discounts on graphic novels, on omnibuses, on single issues, and so on and so forth. So yeah, and by I think it's the right time as well that I've went straight into just comics as well, given that everything going on with the tariffs and so on and so forth. So I think I may have chosen a good time because comic books seem to be exempt from all of that. So long may that continue.
Yeah, mostly. I saw a thing from, I think it was CBR today that was talking about how backboards are getting hit by tariffs now. So that's, I
Yeah,
guess, not
that's
unexpected, but disappointing.
thankfully I did a massive top up on bags and boards because bags and boards we bag and board everything in our stores. So every single new release gets bagged and boarded. Every pull list gets bagged and boarded. So I always order in, the thousands every time they're in stock. So thankfully I have a good back matter of that. So hopefully that won't affect us too much.
Oh, that's good. Well, the doors of Coffee and Heroes have been open since 2017. I know you came from a hospitality background and were working in a two-star Michelin restaurant when you lost your mind and decided to open a comic book shop. So, why did pairing the two, coffee and comic books, make sense as a business model?
So yeah, I used to work so the store set is in Belfast in Northern Ireland, but at the time I lived in Cambridge in England, and I worked at a two Michelin star restaurant called Midsummer House. I was manager of it. It was a really intense job. It was 80 hours a week. It was 16-hour days. It was high intensity, high pressure, a lot of rewards, a lot of good times there as well. But I was always a comic fan, so what I used to do every Wednesday, I would get a 2-hour break on a Wednesday. I would go to my local Forbidden Planet. I would pick up my pull list. Now, keep in mind, I'm fully suited and booted, full suit and tie, everything. And, you walk into a comic store like that, you get a few looks. So the first thing I would do is go to Starbucks to read them. And I'd be getting these funny looks from people, sort of like, grown ass man sitting reading funny books, over in the corner there. So I always thought, why is there not somewhere where that combines both? Somewhere you can buy your pull list, sit down in the same place, have a coffee, read, and hopefully engage maybe in conversation as well. Because what we found certainly from our time is community is a huge thing. If you go into a comic store, you can probably strike up a conversation with someone else there. If they're not into DC and Marvel, they might be into Doctor Who. If they're not into Doctor Who, they might be into Star Trek. So you'll always find something, but it's a bit of a tortured road to us getting open because I saved up quite a lot of money. I started getting takeaway cups made. I started getting uniforms made. I opened an account with Diamond. This is all while still working in the restaurant. And I gave myself 6 months where I said, right, I want to be open in 6 months. So I gave 6 months notice to my job, which is probably the longest notice period anybody's ever given. Well, we were all set up to open in Cambridge. It's a student place, it's quite affluent. There's a lot of sort of money in
Yep.
Cambridge. There was a Forbidden Planet there, so there was a built-in audience. And literally the day, and I mean the day we were going to sign the lease for the unit we found, we were on the way to sign for it. We got a phone call saying, "We're sorry, Subway have usurped your offer. Thank you for your interest." And then they basically hung up. So at that point, I was out of a job. I had a stock of around 20,000 comics, everything made, everything ready. And, I just turned to my other half, Vicky, who, co-owns the store with me and, all the rest. And just was like, it's over. Like it just like that, it's over. So we worked in
To
Cambridge for a little while
Subway.
after that. Yeah, it was honestly, we were on the way to sign the lease with the idea we were going to open in a month. And in a way, looking back, it's the best thing that ever happened because Cambridge is expensive, when it comes to rent and rates and all that kind of stuff. So eventually, a few years later, Vicky, she's English. I met her at the restaurant. She's a chef. And we're together, 13, 14 years now. But we decided we'd move over to Belfast. I hadn't been home in a few years, so we moved over to Belfast. And I found a unit that wasn't too expensive. And I just went, look, we need to do this. If we don't do this now, I'm going to regret it the rest of my life. It broke my heart a little bit. I had to sell my CGC Walking Dead #1 at the time, which was the hottest comic in the world. I think I sold it for around maybe the equivalent of $3,000, and that paid rent for the first 6 months. And I paid that up front, and I said, if it's not working by 6 months, it's not going to work. So we opened. We had a bit of a slow start, but again, costs were low. We had a big back stock because we've been doing it for years, and it just grew. And we were lucky enough to find an audience within 1 year. And a friend who worked with Vicky. Again, it's weird how these things all fall into place, but a guy who worked in the restaurant Vicky was working in, his best friend was closing a comic store, well, an online comic store, and was looking for someone to take their stock. And their stock was around 80,000 comics. So I knew we didn't have the capital in place, but I said, well, look, let's go have a look. And we walked into this warehouse. It was my idea of heaven. It was white boxes everywhere. It was graphic novels everywhere. It was comic supplies. And we got chatting to them, and they were really nice people. They were looking to maybe strike a good deal. I didn't get the feeling they were trying to ask too much or anything. So I said to Vicky, like, this could be the next 10 years of the business. We need to find a way to buy this. And I borrowed money from my mum and dad. I borrowed money from friends. I took out a small loan at the bank, and we bought the stock. And we therefore were able to double the size of our premises. So we moved into a bigger unit, and again that set us apart in Belfast. We suddenly, out of nowhere, had the biggest back catalogue of comics, and this was just a small independent setup. There's a Forbidden Planet in Belfast. There's another comic book store called Comic Book Guys. None of them could touch us within 1 year because our backstock was incredible. And the people latched onto it. We made the money back. We paid everyone back within a year. The risk was worth it. But there's definitely been a few bumps along the road to get to where we are. But my mum says everything happens for a reason, so it was clearly meant to be that way.
Yeah. So Vicky was the chef. I was looking at Midsummer House's website the other night and was blown away. Can we blame her for whatever this weird salmon and white chocolate monstrosity is. I don't know. I'm here for it. I've never had salmon and white chocolate together, so that was
The weirdest thing I
intriguing
had
for sure.
the weirdest thing I ever had when I worked at Midsummer was a dish that was coffee, chocolate, and mushroom. And it somehow worked. And it
Mm,
sounds horrible, but it somehow worked. Yeah, I mean the thing about it is what I will say about those years working at Midsummer, it instilled a work ethic in both of us. You know, we were working, as I say, 14, 16 hour days. But the thing with the hospitality industry is unless you're going to set up your own place, you're essentially working yourself into the ground for someone else because
yeah.
they own the place and it's their success. And I always wanted something of my own. And, you know, I was front of house manager, so I'm used to dealing with people. I'm used to setting up relationships at tables, striking conversations, that kind of thing. So that hospitality background definitely helped me with Coffee and Heroes because community is so big in our place, you know, and every single person walks through the door, it's eye contact, it's hello, how are you? You know, but it's not overbearing. It's not, you know, straight up and what can I help you with and what are you into and this and that. They know I'm there.
Yeah.
Chat away to me if you need something, but you know, otherwise, you know, have a look around. But yeah, no, the hospitality background it definitely helped for setting up the store, definitely because I was so used to dealing with the public, and you do get some strange requests when you own a comic book store. So patience is a good thing sometimes.
Well, how much of the business is actually in the coffee?
I'll be honest, the coffee side of things accounts for 5% of our business, maybe. But the thing is that
Okay.
the whole idea with it was like the business definitely shifted. So when I first opened, we used to open at 8:30 in the morning, and I thought you'll get the casual coffee trade going through, people on their way to work, takeaway coffees. You know, we have our own printed cups made. We made sure to be the cheapest coffee anywhere in Belfast. Like we'll do the equivalent of a caramel macchiato for 40% cheaper than what Starbucks sell it at, for example. But
Yeah.
the first year taught me a lot because we weren't getting that walk-in business, and I was sitting there from 8 o'clock in the morning and maybe not getting a customer until 10 a.m. And I'd start doubting myself. You know, what am I doing wrong? You know, no one's walking through the door. So I made the decision after about a year to start opening at 10 instead of 8:30, and therefore, but I could still access the unit from it, so I could go down if I needed to do some paperwork, if I needed to do some inventory, that kind of thing. But the coffee thing is just it's a way to grow the community. So
Sure.
in our store behind our counter, we have maybe four really long shelves, and all the regulars have their own coffee mug. So when
Oh,
they
that's
come
rad.
in, they'll say, "Oh, cappuccino? Yep, no problem." You get their mug. They feel part of your community straight away because they have. It's almost like they have an investment in the business by that sitting there. So coffee, I always look at as a bonus. Coffee is just a reason for people to stick around, I think, and you know, we don't get a lot of people coming in and getting coffee and leaving the store straight away. They only come into us if they're comic fans. So, you know, at first I thought I'd get the casual people who just like coffee, but it just never happened. But you roll with the punches and you learn as you go with it. And as I say, it's there primarily just as a community thing now.
Okay. Well, I never get to ask people this. I'm always talking about what their favorite comic books are. So this is a rare treat for me. Tell me about your personal favorite coffee.
I am a man of simple pleasures. I'm a black Americano all day long.
Oh,
I'm a huge Twin Peaks nerd. So as black as the sky on a moonless night, as the great Dale Cooper would often say. Um, every so often I'll have a little gingerbread latte. Usually around Christmas, but I'm a black coffee guy all day long. So yeah, nice man of simple pleasures.
okay. Okay. Well, I haven't
What would
had
yours be?
coffee. I haven't had coffee in 9 years now, but
Hmm.
I like my coffee like I like my wine. I like heavy mineral forward stuff. So Central South American roast, where you have really, volcanic soils, and then you whip up a good Turkish with that, and I'm a happy camper. I love a
Yeah,
Turkish coffee.
nice, very nice. Yeah, we do actually have. There's a really good coffee shop in Belfast called Established, and they obviously specialize in coffee. And yeah, they'll get beans from all around the world. So that's where I would go if I'm buying coffee for home, that sort of thing.
Okay.
But otherwise, we actually use, believe it or not, in our store, we use Nespresso. So when I worked in the Michelin star restaurant, that's what we used was Nespresso. And I always had the opinion of if it's good enough for a two-star restaurant, it allows you to control your budget. It allows you to control, there's no wastage because it's not like grinding beans. And another thing I think with coffee shops as well, it can be a little bit frustrating is sometimes it depends who makes your coffee, if it's nice or not. With
Yeah.
Nespresso, it's the same every time, so it's a consistent product as well. I promise I'm not sponsored by Nespresso. The amount of praise I'm heaping on them here, but that was always my thinking.
Well, it makes it easier too because you don't actually need to hire a barista. You can
Yeah,
have somebody who's working in the shop who's helping you out that knows comic books but doesn't have to know the difference between Ecuadorian or Ethiopian
yeah,
roasts. So
no, definitely.
yeah,
Well, that was always my train of thought. If you have staff, it's the same product every time. So, when I worked in other restaurants and we had, beans and grinders and all that, even then I could see it depended who made the coffee, what product was going out to people. So I didn't want to compromise with that.
yeah, that makes sense. Well, part of your outreach beyond just the shop itself is for Coffee and Heroes is the podcast and the YouTube show. In an era where we are increasingly reliant on the holy algorithm, how do you feel like that's helping the business?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, the podcast started like any other podcast in the last 10 years. It started through boredom, through COVID, let's be honest.
Sure.
One of my best customers who has become one of my best friends, Keith, is who I do the podcast with. There's a running joke. I'm Mr. DC, he's Mr. Marvel. Ironically, we both read more independent books than we read either of the big two. But yeah, it started through that as a way of connecting with your friends, chatting comics, doing everything obviously online. And then we were determined once COVID was, under control and world was returning to normality, we were determined not to, as Keith puts it, pod fade. So we kept it going. We do previews for the store. I mean, the thing with comics is it's the most relentless industry in the world. It, you look at the amount of movies or albums or anything else that comes out, nothing touches comics. I mean, I every week when I'm doing the new releases for the racks, there's anywhere between 70 to 90 titles a week.
Yep.
It just does not stop. So we do a previews one. So we go through the previews catalog. We point out the things we think are, the best for best value for people coming up. Get your pre-orders in. Don't miss out on this. We do a review show, and I was chatting to you a little bit about it off air just before, but we made the decision very early on that our podcast was going to be a celebratory podcast, not a negative one. If there's things we don't like, we just won't talk about them. I think there's enough negativity in podcast and YouTube land and people who do things for clicks and all the rest, and that's fine. There's obviously a market for that kind of stuff, but we wanted to be a positive one, so we only talk about what we enjoy. So we do a review show for that, and then yeah, with YouTube, I just started doing it again for in the store. New releases coming out each week. What was new into the store, that kind of thing. So I feel they're all free tools to help you. When you own your own business, you look at every tool you can possibly utilize to get
Sure.
your information out to people. I resisted TikTok for about 4 years. I finally gave in about 5 months ago. Um, I make sure I'm never on it. It's only really video and stuff in the store, but it's scary. The upturn in business I've seen since I started using TikTok is incredible.
Really?
Oh, it's
Okay.
it's unreal. I mean, a YouTube video, I'll be lucky sometimes to get 150 views on a YouTube video, but at the same time, I do still have people coming in saying, "Oh, I saw on your YouTube this was in. Do you have any left?" So at least I get enough back from people that I know it's worth doing. But like I put up a video on TikTok the other day and it was a minute long. It was literally just me walking around the store with the camera. Hey guys, been working really hard for Free Comic Book Day. We've got tons of new packs ready. We've got tons of new graphics, tons of new omnibuses. We hope to see you then. Very simple video. It got over 20,000 views. And
Wow.
and then I put the same video up on YouTube as a short, and I got like 200 views. It's TikTok's incredible. You you kind of got to realize just the market you're aiming for if you want to grow in the comic industry, and you need to try and get younger people into it. And
Right.
certainly things like the MCU have helped over the years with that. TV shows have helped with that. Invincible, Walking Dead, et cetera, et cetera. So there have been other things that have got people into it from a younger age. But TikTok's incredible. It's scary. I still don't know an awful lot about it. I'm definitely a complete novice with it, but I don't let a week go by. I don't put up at least 2 or 3 videos in the store.
Okay. Yeah, I'm constantly beating the drum about trying to get and figure out how to get younger people hooked, because it really is the future of the medium. If we let 2 generations slip away, we're done.
Yeah,
At least
absolutely.
in the way it is currently. And I
I
was
think that.
watching an
Oh, sorry,
April
go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, no,
No,
please, absolutely.
I was watching an April YouTube release, and you were talking about how the Absolute and Ultimate lines were almost on a weekly drop schedule, and how that made the
Yeah.
ecosystem healthier. From what you're seeing, are those books drawing in a younger audience, or what is pulling in the younger audience?
Well, I think the Absolute and Ultimate lines have been incredible. They have, I think, Ultimate Spider-Man when it came out surprised a lot of people. Going back, I mean, I always look at it from. It's hard for me to judge what works for other stores. So when I say all of
Yeah.
this might be what works for my store, but it might not work for other people. But in my experience, like, so a lot of people slept on Ultimate Spider-Man because it was the first of the books, and obviously people remember the much revered Bagley and Bendis run from years ago and thought, "Do I really need a new version of this?" And then it got an audience, and then within 2 issues, it was our highest pull list title. Batman had been constantly our highest pull list title for 5 years, probably. Ever since Tom Keane was doing it, and then obviously it went on to Tinian um, and then on to Joshua Williamson for like 6 issues, and then Chip Zdarsky. But the Ultimate line just came out of nowhere, and the big thing I think that is so important for getting younger people into it, and this is what both the Ultimate line and the Absolute line have both been doing. It's 2 things. One, clarity of a starting point. You do not need to have ever even picked up a comic before. Pick up this #1, and you will be brought into it. And 2, new printings. There is nothing worse than issue 3 being out of something and you cannot get people issue 1 and 2 because secondary market is too expensive. It's out of print. You got to be lucky and maybe pay over the odds for it online. Ultimate Spider-Man 1, I think, went to 8 printings. Um, Absolute Batman has went to 6 printings. Absolute Superman's went to 3 or 4 printings. Absolute Wonder Woman's went to 3 or 4. Ultimates went to a couple. And even outside of those two, the Energon universe has been massive as well. Transformers, Void Rivals, G.I. Joe. Transformers 1 went back to 10 printings. People were coming in when issue 7 was like going, "Can you backsource me all of these?" And I'm like, "Yeah, absolutely. They're all in stock in new printings." Um, I remember when Transformers came out, we were in the top 5 stores in the whole of the UK for how many we ordered. We ordered like 150 copies, which is massive for us. I never ordered that amount of titles for anything. Well, until Ultimate and Absolute came along. But I just took it's knowing your audience, and a lot of people were coming and asking about Transformers, and the IDW run was very convoluted. It was hard to find a starting point. It was hard to find graphic novels that were in print. It was hard to find a compendium. And then suddenly, simplicity, #1. It's by this guy, Daniel Warren Johnson. Have you read Do a Powerbomb? Have you read Beta Ray Bill? Have you read Murder Falcon? Um, so the fact it was a #1, it had the Robert Kirkman machine behind it, with Image Skybound, and the fact that it was Daniel Warren Johnson told me order big on this. And I had maybe 40 people with a pull list. I was like, I'm ordering 150 of these. We sold out of all of them within a month. People were just coming and coming to it. So I think word of mouth's a big thing. I think the fear of missing out can be a powerful tool sometimes, but actually missing out is the worst thing. Like I've still people coming to me. Absolute Batman, is it 8 or 9's out next week? I think it's 8. It is 8. I still have people coming in now, 7 issues in, going, "Can you give me this from the start?" My mates are talking about this to say it's incredible. And every time I get new printings in, they sell out, they sell out, they sell out. So Absolute and Ultimate, I think, and I do want to include the Energy Online in this as well, because Transformers has been incredible. I think they've really reinvigorated the industry in the last couple of years, just through that simplicity of starting point and making sure printings are kept in print to make sure people can get it when you're a few issues in. So I really can't underscore. I mean, Absolute Batman is our biggest pull now, and it has double the amount of people on it the Ultimate Spider-Man has. The Ultimate Spider-Man still our biggest Marvel pull. It's those books, and the quality of them is great as well. That's the other key part. It's not just all hype. Even though Batman is my favorite character of all time, I actually think Absolute Superman's the best title. And I think
I
what
agree.
Jason Aaron's doing with that is just tremendous. I mean, Absolute Batman is every bit as good as I thought it would be, but that was expected. But Absolute Superman has just caught me off guard, and every book that comes out, I think, is tremendous. Although all of them are good, and that's the key. They've put great creative teams on the Ultimate line and the Absolute line. And just to finish off a really long train of thought on this, very conscious of how much I'm talking, but just to finish off a good train of thought on this, they've both been sensible, Marvel and DC, with not flooding the market with too many titles. The X books at the moment are a really hard sell from a store capacity because there's too many titles. They did the same thing with Krakoa. They're doing the same thing now, and then they're starting to cancel titles 10 issues in, which is not a good look. But with DC, it was like, here's 3 books, give it 6 months, here's another 3 books. Marvel, Ultimate titles, there's 5. Ultimate Wolverine's the only one that's been added since they all launched. So long may that continue, because you've got at least one new Ultimate book every week, and at least one new Absolute book every week, and that keeps people coming in every single week. So both companies are knocking it out of the park with those two. But there is an argument to them be made that, are they maybe neglecting their legacy lines a little bit? So it's a tough balancing act, certainly.
Yeah, absolutely. You were talking about being a reader of a lot of indies yourself. So as a storefront, how do you balance what you put on the shelves? Do you order what you know you can sell, or do you order stuff with the anticipation of being a fan of indies and stuff? Well, I think I can move this. I can get
Mhm.
enough people who are into this, because one of the refrains I've heard from a lot of retailers is all these variant covers are just taking up so much shelf space, you know?
Yeah. When it comes to indie, so in our store, I have like an old school sort of attached to the wall rack. So it's like an old magazine wire rack situation. There are 6 columns, and there are 8 rows to each column. The first 2 columns are DC. The next 2 columns are Marvel. The next 2 columns are indie. I give indie books equal shelf space, which I think is important, first of all. It doesn't make it seem like it's an afterthought. Pardon me. It's the same with graphic novels. We have 2 huge bookcases of DC, 2 huge bookcases of Marvel, 2 huge bookcases of Image, and then I have bookcases around the store of Dark Horse, Boom, IDW. So it's important to give these things shelf space. I think if they look like an afterthought, people will treat them as an afterthought. The other thing is, and I'm sure loads of stores do this, but this is like one of our mantras, is follow creators, not characters. Don't just blindly buy a Batman book because Batman's in it, or Spider-Man book because Spider-Man's in it. You're really enjoying, you enjoyed the last couple of years of Batman. That guy Chip Zdarsky, he did this great book called Stillwater through Image Comics. You should really give that a try. He was the artist on a great book called Sex Criminals. Great sense of humor to it, very adult, but a lot of heart to it as well. You're reading Ultimate Spider-Man, Jonathan Hickman. Have you ever tried East of West? With Nick Dragotta. Oh, Nick Dragotta, he's the artist on Absolute Batman. So these 2 guys have done East of West. So I think the key to it is educating your audience as they come in. Anybody who comes in will ask me my recommendations, and I won't always recommend everything. But what I'll always say is, I'm quite diplomatic with this. I'll never say something's bad. I'll just say, look, it's not for me.
Sure.
Because that's the thing. I'm not a huge Rick and Morty comic fan, but there's a lot of guys come into our store to read Rick and Morty comics, for example. So independent, I think it's becoming less and less of a tag to call it indie, because let's be honest, Image is almost as big as the big 2 now. All the best creators, and that's where you get the best deal. You get the most freedom to tell your stories, and you look at someone like James Tynion. So Tynion came through Scott Snyder's writing class, moved on to do backups in Batman, co-write Batman Eternal, worked his whole way up to Detective Comics, onto the main back title, and then went, I'm going to go over here and set up my own little thing. Order Tree, Department of Truth, Something's Killing the Children. Something's Killing the Children sells as much in our store as Amazing Spider-Man does. So
Wow.
people will follow quality stories, and they're doing that because they're following creators. They trust creators. So if I say to people, when it comes to me doing ordering, just to go back to your original question. So say, for example, I've got 10 people on Tinian. So Exquisite Corpses, here's a good example. I may be dating this slightly by, whenever you release it, but Exquisite Corpses is out next week. So it's a new James Tynion book. I've got 12 people with it on their pull list. I've ordered 40 copies because I know that will sell. Because Tinian, number one, unfortunately, there's the investment side of things where people go, well, Something is Killing the Children, number one, it goes for, silly money now. Maybe I should pick that up. But I try to encourage people to pick it up because of the quality of the storytelling, not because this might be worth X amount in years. We're a very story driven store. Read titles because they're good, not because you think, like a
Right.
Spawn #1, they're going to put your kids through college. We've all seen the X-Men #1 Jim Lee stories and the Spawn #1s and et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, no. Bottom line, when it comes to indie stuff, give it equal space in your store and it will thrive because you know. I will say with back issues, that's not the case quite so much. We actually do afford almost equal space, but people very seldom come in for indie back issues unless it's a franchise. So they'll come in for Transformers or Thundercats or Power Rangers, but they probably won't come in for that wee 6-issue mini series that we have 3 issues of or that kind of thing. But when it comes to new releases and graphic novels, yeah, equal space in the store I think is the key.
Yeah. With the indies, you can always just point them to the trade anyway. So,
Yeah, and I mean, don't get me wrong, it's a vicious circle because some people will come in and they'll say, "Oh, I'll wait for the trade for that," but maybe if it doesn't sell enough in single issues, will it even make a trade? Is that on the customer? Should they have to buy it twice to get a trade? Get a bad single issue on a trade. So it can be a vicious circle, and again, it's an industry like no others. It's full of snap decisions and titles maybe not selling enough within their first 3 issues and things like that. Like a good example is recently there's a book came out, Two Face from Christian Ward, thoroughly excellent. Only lasted 6 issues. He was on the record saying he wanted it to be 12, but it all depended on sales. So based on the first 3 issues, not even with the trade out, DC cancelled it. Now Poison Ivy is on issue 33, but it has variants that maybe attract a certain audience. So that's why it's kept going, whereas Two Face doesn't. So it's a strange industry. I thought DC would have waited until the first trade came out because they learned that the hard way with Hellblazer from Cy Spurrier and Aaron Campbell, and then went, maybe we should get these guys back. This sold really well, but they canceled the singles after 7 issues. So, um, yeah, it's a strange industry when you start talking out loud about it so much.
it really is. I was listening to the podcast recently, and you were talking about the challenge of getting single issues in from smaller indie publishers like Mad Cave. What's going on with that?
Yeah, so Diamond UK is a separate company from Diamond US. So obviously Diamond US is going through, administration. They're looking to sell off all their assets. It looked like they had it all set up with a company, Alliance Entertainment, and that fell through. So Diamond UK essentially works as a middleman. So they buy, I know in the US it's a different distribution network. So Lunar Publishing take care of DC, Penguin Random House do Image and IDW and Marvel. But in the UK, it's one supplier. You've no choice. It's Diamond UK. But
Oh,
they
wow.
have to set up deals from Lunar and from Penguin Random House to then supply the UK. So they came to terms on agreements with Diamond or with Lunar and Penguin Random House. But I think with some of the smaller companies, they couldn't come to an agreement with them on discount percentages. So they basically just said, look, we can't stock these titles. And it's a frustration, certainly. I mean, we like to push every publisher where we can. Mad Cave, we had guys in the store who were on Flash Gordon. We had guys who were on Dick Tracy. There was a Phantom one coming out that people were excited for. But we're really at the best in the UK of what Diamond UK can set up and source. But it was interesting because not long after Diamond filed for its Chapter 11, isn't it, I think? Not long after they filed for that, we got an email from Penguin Random House that they're looking to set up international distribution for comics. So there may
Okay.
soon be other alternatives, but for the moment, our hands are tied slightly. I have managed to source a couple of titles for people because I I want people to trust us as a store. Like if we get them 5 issues of a 6-issue mini series, I don't want them to then not get the last issue. So even at
Yeah.
expense to myself, I've got in that last issue by importing it from the States. I pay the extra. I don't charge the customer any extra, but I just wouldn't want that to be unfinished. But again, that's all about setting up a trust network with your customers, and that's why they come back. So I see that as more of a long term investment in people rather than, oh, can you pay that extra £4 I have to pay for that issue? I'm not going to do that. So yeah, it's definitely an interesting time in the industry. The whole diamond thing. I thought people have been expecting it for a while, but it's still maybe a hard thing to take when you see it in black and white.
Yeah, for sure. Well, you talked about the setting up trust with customers? It seems like COVID was a catalyst for most shops to sort of adapt or die. How did
Mhm.
you ride that change?
So COVID was an interesting one because I mean, COVID's where Diamond's problem started in a way because they basically said we're shutting down distribution, and DC went, oh, we don't like that. So DC set up with Lunar, and then et cetera, et cetera. So there was a snowball effect of COVID there. But the thing was, our deliveries weren't stopping, so titles were still coming on a weekly basis. So we had access to our store 1 day a week. So we were able to go down and like do things behind the scenes and all the rest. But what we actually did was we rerouted our deliveries to our house, and then we still had everybody's pull lists on file. So we would work out everybody's titles, and then what Vicky and I would do every week is on a Wednesday and a Thursday we would just be on the road for 10 hours a day. We would just drive to people's
Wow.
houses. Would always be in touch in advance. It wasn't just like we, turned up and said, "Buy your comics." You order these. No, no, no.
Of course.
We would chat to people in advance and say, "Look, we can fit you into an hour window here. We'll drop stuff off." So what we would do is we would be in the road. We'd get to their house, knock the door, set the comics in an envelope on the ground. Take our 2-3 meters, steps back, and then we would chat with people as well as they picked up their comics. They would PayPal us the money. That kept the business going. But it kept the community aspect going because let's be honest, during COVID we were bored talking through screens to everybody all the time. It's we were sort of losing that personal touch. And I think a lot of people appreciated our personal touch. We didn't miss a week. We were on the road. Vicky did all the drive. I don't drive, so all the and kudos has to go to Vicky for the driving. Um but we just kept in touch with people. We kept the community going. We explained everything that was happening with the business step by step. And yeah, when COVID hit, I think we were 2.5 years into it, nearly 3 years. And we just said, look, we've put way too much into this to just roll over for it. Let's try and keep it going. And again, I'm sure different stores had different things, but we got decent grants, different business grants. We took out a business loan, which I'm thankful to say gets paid off in about 4 months' time. It was like a 5 year sort of loan system, but you just did what you could to keep it going. I just didn't want the store to I didn't want all the hard work that we'd done in the beginning to be for nothing for circumstances that were out of our control. So yeah, we were determined to keep it going, and thankfully we can try and keep it going as much as we can. But if the customers don't want it, tough. Thankfully, we have that great customer base, and they kept us going as well. So yeah, we're thankful for every single person who walks through the door and has stuck with us over the years. But yeah, COVID was a trying time. Don't get me wrong, but it reinforced that community a little bit more.
Yeah, and I imagine having that coffee element was a boost coming out of the back end of all that because everybody wanted to be around people again. Has that spirit carried on, or has it diminished at this point at all, or
Not at
you just
all.
have that vibe at the shop?
We have that vibe at the shop in general. I mean, Wednesdays, there's always at least 10 people in the store all day long. Some come, some go. It's conversations about the new issues. It's a weird thing in a way because I say this to people all the time. Like, my original idea for the store was you pick up your pull list, you've somewhere to sit down that's comfortable, you have a coffee, you read your comics. No one reads in the store. They're all too busy talking. So in a weird way, it's the perception shifted a tiny bit, but no, the community without the community, the business wouldn't be what it is. It's we, as I say all the time, we are thankful every person who walks through the door and supports us because I'm not an idiot. Amazon's cheaper than us. There's online book retailers that are cheaper than us. eBay is cheaper than us. But I like to think people come back A because of the community, B because of our knowledge, and C,
Yeah.
because they like the people who own it. I mean, I recently had a son, as I say, Alfred, and he'll be 3 in July. And when he was born, the outpouring of gifts and well wishes and cards and all the rest, you sort of knew you had a big community in the store. But once they all sort of did something at once, you were sort of like, wow, like people really do appreciate this store. And it's at a time where, let's be honest as well, the high street is struggling. The Amazon's getting bigger and bigger, and there's more and more stores closing and this and that, and less reasons for people to maybe come into town. But we're kind of lucky we've created a space where sometimes people come into town, they come to us and then they go home. It's they just like that hangout space. So yeah, it's we've been very fortunate in a lot of ways, but a lot of hard work's obviously been into it as well.
What goes on in downtown? Is there a big pool or is there a stadium?
No, there's the thing is, in Belfast city centre is quite small, but just a lot of the high street is just not. You see units everywhere that are up for let or businesses closing down unless they're big corporations and big franchises. I mean, Belfast city centre is quite small, but that doesn't stop there being 9 Starbucks in, a 2-minute walk of each other. It's sort of become that sort of place. But where we are, we're in a market where there's maybe about 30 stores, but they're all quite unique. They're not really stores that you see anywhere else on the high street. They're stores for sort of sole traders and small companies. But we're fortunate there's a car park beside us. No, in fact, there's two big car parks beside us. There's one in our market, and then there's one in a shopping center beside us. So people find it quite easy to get to us, which is good. They can
Okay.
pull up, park the car, get out, come in and sit with us for an hour, and then out to go, sort of thing. So yeah, but I always say that my main aim with the store is always make it a place where if I didn't own it, I would want to be at it. So that's
Yeah.
always the ethos to work with as well.
Yeah. Well, if you could change one thing about the industry and only one, what would it be?
Oh, that's a big question. Ah, that is
I
a big,
know.
big
That's why
question.
I said just one.
This may sound like a strange thing to say for a store owner who deals in mostly lower priced items, so you have to sell quantity rather than anything else. I would like to see more affordable stuff. Um, DC for me in the last year have cracked it really well. See those DC compact editions? They are
Yeah.
the future. It really bugs me that they release like 10 of them really quickly and then there hasn't been a new one for like 6 months. But there's nothing worse than younger kids coming into the store and like I would love them to walk out with 5 or 6 comics each, but they maybe only have £10, so they're walking out with 2 comics or 3 comics. So I would want
Yeah.
to see more reasonably priced items, and I know that's hard. Obviously cost of printer paper and shipping and tariffs and taxes and all sorts. But I would just love the industry to be a bit more affordable. So I would like to see more comics. Mark Miller tried it a couple of years ago. It didn't seem to go anywhere, but like he released a title called Nightclub at $1.99, with the idea being that like lower price number one, more affordable, but no one else has followed suit. Todd McFarlane's done it for years with Spawn being $3. It's going up to $4 in the middle of the summer, I think. So it's sort of going the wrong way from that point. I would rather if someone walked in with £10, I'd rather see them walk out with 5 comics, not 2 comics. That sort of thing. So yeah, for me, just make it more affordable because I think nothing's more welcoming than saying, come in, your money will go a lot further here, sort of thing. Like
Yeah.
we do things where we can, we have a stamp card system. Every 10 you buy, you get one free. We do discounts in store. We mark down none of our omnibuses are RRP. We mark them down by about 10%. And that's the business in a way taking a hit rather than anything else. But I just want people's money to sort of go a bit further. So yeah, if I could change one thing in the industry, it's just a bigger range of affordable stuff. Like those compacts are great, but there's only maybe 10 titles. If there was 100 of those, it's why manga does so well. Manga. I've only a small manga section in store. If I was a better businessman, I'd have a bigger section. But my passion isn't there. So like, if people walk in and say, "Oh, could you recommend such and such?" My manga knowledge is Death Note, Naruto, and Akira. That's as far as it goes. Whereas if someone says recommend a DC book or a Marvel book or an Image book, I can talk to them for an hour about stuff. But I think that's why manga's so popular from that. Every single manga book is $10 and under, so
Yeah.
people can buy bulk of it. So yeah, more DC compacts, please. Marvel tried to copy the idea a little bit, but they copied the homework but did it wrong because they released their books at $15 with back matter and extra features and stuff. No, just give me the story. 12 issues of Watchmen for $10. 11 issues of Court of Owls for $10. That's just incredible value. So yeah, more of that definitely.
Yeah, I think that's the other thing with manga is just that it's linear and you don't have to worry about all these continuity things. I'm not a big continuity person. I mean, I'm not completely throw out the rules, but I really like Elseworld stuff for that reason. I think
Mhm.
that's one of the reasons the Ultimates and Absolute has been so appealing to
Oh,
people is
absolutely, yeah.
because you can just jump right in, as you were saying, and you don't have to worry about 50 years of history.
Yeah, I mean, I think sometimes it's down to stores to educate a little bit though as well. I think I see memes going around all the time of, oh, I want to get into comics, and then it's that, still of Charlie from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia in front of the board with all the different connections. And then it's someone going, oh, get into manga, start with number one. I think that's really lazy. I think there are millions of starting points in comics for people. I think it's up to store owners to educate and give those starting
Sure.
points. I mean, I've been recently doing this thing where I now print out starting points for new reader stickers. So if
Okay.
say Batman's on issue, so perfect example, Hush 2. Anyone who's not into comics would look at that and go issue 158. Do I need all 157 before? But if you advertise on it, starting point for new readers, this is the start of a story. You can pick this up and then read the next ones. So I do think a lot of the onus is on the store owners to educate on it, because I do think that point does get overplayed a little bit. I remember when I chatted to one of my favorite artists, and he's a bit of a friend of the store, was telling me one or two stories before coming on, Clay Man. I was chatting to him about continuity. I think it's in one of our old interviews. And he says continuity should be specific to the reader. They can ignore what they want from continuity. They they can they can give more value to certain things from continuity. It's their continuity. Just tell a good story. And yeah, don't worry about the connections here and the connections there. Like Marvel are finding this out right now, I think, with their movies. When the first 10 years of the MCU happened, it was perfect. But see now, I chatted to one or two people in the store about this. A couple of years, Alfie comes to me, my son, and says, "Oh, Dad, I'd like to get into the Marvel movies. Where should I start?" Well, son, I've got these 52 movies for you to watch. I've got these 15 TV shows. It. If you get too bogged down in continuity, you'll never read or watch anything. So yeah, I think
Sure.
I love to see more responsibility taken from store owners and people who are passionate and who are fans of the industry to say, here's your starting points. You want to get into Batman? Here's year one. You want to get into Spider-Man? Here's Spider-Man Blue. You want to get into, obviously it's different with indie comics, but indie comics are easy enough to source in terms of runs. You want to get into Walking Dead? Here's volume one. When it comes to the big two stuff, you can always find stories that are like, look, this epitomizes the character. If you enjoy this, I'll recommend something else.
Yeah, I think they're doing a good pivot, at least with the Marvel TV shows. I just finished up the new Daredevil
Yeah.
show. Not to give anything away, but I don't think you need a whole lot of context from the previous seasons to really know what's going on if you basically know who Daredevil, the Punisher,
Yeah.
and Kingpin are.
Well, the thing is with Daredevil, I mean, Daredevil, as you can see from my arm, Daredevil's one of my guys. I mean, I've all the omnibuses sort of behind you there. I've dared every single Daredevil on the omnibus you can get. Daredevil's a good example, and we still haven't watched the finale of Born Again, so I can't fully comment on it. But
Sure.
you get 5 episodes into that Daredevil Born Again, and there's one episode in it that for me is the best episode I've watched so far. And it's a one-shot adventure of Matt Murdock stuck in a bank as it's being robbed, and there's Miss Marvel's dad as the bank manager. So you've got your ties to a larger audience, but it's a one-shot story. That's what it should be. This is everything about the character. Matt could have walked away. He could have said to the police, whatever. He wasn't dressed up in his Daredevil, costume. So he has to think like a hero and think in a logical way. How do I protect people and save people? That episode for me is the best of any recent Marvel TV show, I think, because it has a tiny bit of humor to it as well. The dad character is great. It has stakes and it shows what it is to be a hero. But you could have never watched another episode of Daredevil ever again. Just watch that one and you'll know what the character's about. So yeah, I think Marvel, yeah, they're trying to figure out the live action universe. I think DC maybe have a good opportunity here because with Superman coming out, they can say, look, this is the start of our universe. So, to make it simple, you don't need to have watched anything else. The only thing with the DC industry, just to jump in with a slightly personal note, is the Snyder cultists might stop that happening, unfortunately. But yeah, tribalism's a terrible thing. It's something
It
we try to
is. It
it's
is.
something we try to stay away from in the store. Like I say to people all the time, don't just limit yourself to DC. Don't just limit yourself to Marvel. You're missing out on some great stuff. Just read what you enjoy. It doesn't matter what company produced it.
Yeah, it's really weird because we have those things. You were talking about your co-host and Marvel guy, DC guy. Jimmy, my co-host, is exactly the same way. He grew up DC. I grew up with Marvel. It just happened to be what we
Yeah.
were exposed to because that was what was available. So he did this thing in March where he covered a whole bunch of Marvel titles. So he was introduced to The Thing and the Fantastic Four, and he just had never gotten into them before. Now they're
Hmm.
on his pull. He's like, I don't know why I stayed away from these characters,
Yeah,
but I did. It's weird.
that's the way it should be. I mean, for me, what I find is my weekly stuff, I read a bit of everything, but I always have at least one omnibus on the go in the background that I'm trying to get through. And all my
Okay.
omnibuses I'm reading are Marvel because I grew up DC, so I've read all the big DC stories. I've read Batman Nightfall, I've read Death and Return of Superman, I've read Alan Moore's Swamp Thing, I've read, all these great runs, and I own a lot of them anyway. But what I find is I recently I only just read in its entirety Captain America by Ed Brubaker. It's one of the best things I've ever read across those 5 omnibuses. So yeah, don't limit yourself to what you read or what you watch or what you play or what you like. I'm a big wrestling fan as well, and again,
Okay.
tribalism that exists in the current state of things because there's an alternative to WWE, and people are just so tribal, and I just don't get it. Just watch or read good stuff. Don't worry about who makes it. It can be quite a black and white world we live in now. I think something's either the greatest thing in the world or it's the worst thing in the world. There's plenty of things that are just that was pretty good. What do I have for dinner tonight? It can still be entertaining. It
Yeah.
doesn't have to be the worst or the best.
Yeah, I mean, I was a production assistant for WCW back in the Attitude
Oh,
Era. So I
nice.
think what they're doing right now is really just trying to mirror, in some ways, the rivalry, because that
Yeah.
rivalry really there was some bad things about it. The misogyny was off the charts,
Mhm.
but it really pushed wrestling to be what it is today
Yeah.
when you had that rivalry.
Yeah, I think
So,
so. I think from a business point of view, I think you always need a rival. DC and Marvel have been pushing each other for 60, 70 years at this point, and sometimes DC will be on top, sometimes Marvel will be on top. But I think as fans, you don't need to get involved in that. I think as a fan, just watch what you enjoy and don't give so much of your energy to like hate watching things or, abusing things, or it all goes back to what I said about like with our podcast. Like talk about things you enjoy. Don't give airspace to stuff that you don't like. But well, I'd like to pick your brain sometime about that WCW time. Definitely.
sure, absolutely. No problem. Well, what is the favorite thing that you've got going that you're reading right now?
Um, as I say, I'm loving the Absolute Universe. I think there's such great stuff there. The Ultimate Universe, I think, that's the most exciting Spider-Man's been in years. Independent wise, I'm loving the Ghost Machine stuff. All the stuff that Jeff Johns, Gary Frank, Jason Fabuk, Peter J. Tomasi. Those guys are doing some great books with Redcoat and Rook Exodus and Hyde Street and stuff like that. Let me see what else am I really enjoying. Anything, and I mean anything from Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips is just like those guys have got it made now. That they're another good example, actually, just to go back about what you're saying about like the models in the industry. Like they decided a
Yeah.
few years back, we're not releasing single issues anymore. And I'm not saying this would work for everybody, but they found a way to say we're going to make every book we release a finished story. It's going to be hardback. It's going to be one shot that you can pick up, and it's going to feel special every time there's a new release. And those guys have cracked that. A lot of that comes from Sean Phillips being a machine. He just does not seem to stop drawing. But anything those guys do, like there's a new criminal book out in August, looking forward to called Knives. Um, I'm enjoying Saladin Ahmed's Daredevil. I have to say I was a little wary on it on the start because I love Chip Zdarsky's run so much, but it's really grown on me quite a lot. Things to look forward to. Fantastic Four #1. Ryan North is hitting soon. It's nice to see a bit of synchronicity with the movies, I must admit, from a store point of view. Um, you know, you were asking me about Free Comic Book Day. I wish I had have had 1,000 copies of the first trade paperback of Invincible. So I would have sold every single one of them. But they were all out of print. They're all coming back in next week, which is nice. But yeah, Fantastic Four. There's a new #1 coming out the same month as the movie. They're doing the Summer of Superman through DC at the moment. I got an early look at Superman Unlimited actually by Dan Slott and Raphael Albuquerque. That first issue is incredible. and I'm not a huge Superman guy. I think it's hard to. I have a weird view on Superman. I think it's hard to do a long ongoing because there's only so many times you can go magic, somebody lives in danger, kryptonite. But
Sure.
miniseries, some of the Superman miniseries are some of my favorite things. Up in the Sky and American Alien and
Red Sun.
Red Sun for all seasons. So shorter ones I think are great. But yeah, check out that Superman Unlimited if you get a chance. Very, very good stuff. I mean, I genuinely enjoy so much. I'll read every single indie #1 that comes into the store, regardless of publisher.
Okay.
And DC and Marvel, I will try out most titles as well. So there's not a lot out there that I don't like. Maybe I'm just easily pleased. I don't know.
No, I mean, maybe I'll help sell some Exquisite Corpses then in the shop for anybody who happens to be a listener. I got a sneak peek at that, and I am hype on that book. I
Yeah.
think it's going to be so good for the audience that it's meant for.
Nice. No, I'm really looking forward to it. As I say, anything Tinian tends to deliver. I mean, Nice House on the Lake and now Nice House by the Sea. I think those are a couple of the best books of the last couple of years. I remember reading the first issue of Nice House on the Lake and just being blown away. And it's a hard book to sell in a way because you hear the synopsis a little bit and it's like 10 strangers in a house by the lake. You think there's going to be a horror book, there's going to be a killer. One of them's going to get killed each issue. Who's the killer? And you get halfway through that first issue, and I remember it very definitively being a page turn and going, "Oh, that's what this is about." And I was really blown away by that. I think he's a very, very clever guy. A shout out actually for one of my favorite runs of recent years was Firepower by Robert Kirkman and Chris Stanley.
Yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful book through Image Comics as well. So, but yeah, I could talk recommendations all day long. Believe me, it's like I never
Yeah,
switch off from
that
work.
Exquisite. Oh yeah. Well, I mean, I never do either. The Exquisite Corpses thing is really cool. I got to talk to Michael Anybody is interested who is listening, I talked to Michael Walsh. You can go back. I'll put a link in the show notes. But about Exquisite Corpses, and it has the production nucleus of a big two book, and that's why I'm so hype about it, because
Hmm.
all of the writers that were working on that got into a room in a cabin for a weekend and just ground out the story. And then you had Walsh who came in and he added wrestling fans, this is right up your alley because he created these immediately recognizable characters with just enough personality and that nugget. So it feels like watching wrestling, playing Fortnite mixed with murderers who are thrown into a small town, and all the townspeople is really the nucleus of the story, what
Hmm.
they're going through. But you have a bag of Skittles that's going right along with your Halloween, there, that is beautiful, and all these crazy vibrant colors, and it's just a lot of fun. It'll be a cool ride. This is the first one in a very long time that I feel like that book I would read in my car.
Hmm.
I'm that hype about it. So,
Well, two things on that. One, I'll make sure it's top of my reading pile next week when it comes out. The only thing is, it does make me a little sad because I love Michael Walsh's Silver Coin, but obviously, if he's tied up with Exquisite Corpses, he might take a break from that. I'll definitely listen to that interview though. I've never chatted to him or actually heard any interviews he's done, but I thought that Silver Coin book was such a clever idea because you're so used to one writer and a different artist each issue with anthology books, but you very
yep.
seldom get same artist but different writers. And the caliber of writers in that book, Tinian, Chip Zdarsky, Ram V, Kelly Thompson, there were so many great writers in that book. I love that. Yeah. No, I'll definitely give that a listen. Yeah, even I will check out the show notes for that and give it a listen.
There we go. That's my salesmanship is done for the day. So I'll turn your salesmanship back on. What else do you have coming up with the shop that you want to pitch?
I
How can
mean,
people help?
certainly the big thing with the store is we're about to hit our 8th anniversary, which is 1st of June. Uh, it's always easy to remember when we opened because in a nice bit of comic synchronicity, we opened the day that Wonder Woman 1 came out in the cinema, which was
Okay.
June 1st, 2017. So, yeah, I mean, with the store, we're just always doing our best to improve it where we can. We're always loading it out with as much stock as possible, loads of starting points, loads of new graphic novels. We do our previews boards in the store to let you guys know what's coming up next. I've been doing some changes in store recently. We may have one or two signings coming up towards the end of the year. Definitely check out the podcast. We've been interviewing some great people lately. We chatted to one of my absolute heroes recently, Rick Remender, who is
Nice.
the writer of one of my favorite books of all time, Deadly Class. It's tattooed right there. Um, that was a fantastic interview. We're expanding the YouTube channel to include more videos similar to yourself as well. So we're working on loads and loads of stuff. I mean, that's the bottom line with our store is, it's run by fans. So, it's run by people who love this industry, read as much as possible about it, happy to recommend stuff, and always happy to chat to people who are involved in the creation of it. So hopefully that comes across with anybody that walks through the door. But no, it's nice to come on and chat to someone who's well informed, just as passionate as I am, and I don't have to lead with questions for once. So this is nice.
Yeah, well, as a fellow Daredevil fan, I'm going back and trying to get my hands on the omnibuses for Miller's Run, because when I was a kid, I look at my own comics journey, and there are milestones.
Mhm,
This was the first book that I ever read that my cousin gave me, and it was, an Amazing Spider-Man way back in the day. I can't remember the number, but, with the vulture and everything, and that was the first thing. And the next big milestone was Daredevil 189, and there was a used bookstore that was in town. My mom would drop me off, and comics were like 15 cents, and they were all messed up and mangled and everything, just in these massive stacks. And I saw that Daredevil cover where he's flying, and the yellow cover with, the ninjas at the bottom
mhm.
and the rain of arrows that are going up. And as a kid, instant magic. So I'm now going back and trying to find and reread a lot of the stuff from
Mhm.
from being a kid and fill in those milestone moments for myself.
Well, I'll make you slightly jealous right now for just a quick one, but this is all my Daredevil here. This this is the first ever omnibus that I ever got. So one year I was in Forbidden Planet with my mum, and this was maybe about 15 years ago. And she said to me, "Have you any ideas what you want for Christmas, Alan?" And I had never even thought of buying an omnibus before. I was like, "Oh, they're so expensive, they're so big." And
Yeah,
I pointed this one out. My mum got me for Christmas. It is very well read. It has stains at the top. It has folds. It has all sorts. But that was the first ever omnibus I ever added into my collection. But and it's one of the absolute best ever since. But yeah, when it comes to my comic journey, I have a very easy story with it. I was in the comics as a kid, but I sort of grew out of them a little bit in my teenage years and stuff like that.
yeah.
And in my early 20s, I worked in a cinema, and Batman Begins had just come out, and I loved it. It blew my mind. And one of the guys I work with said, "Oh, you enjoyed that? Here, read this." And he handed me Batman Year One. And I read it that night, and the next day I came in, I handed it straight back to him and went, "What else you got?" And that was me. I was hooked ever since. And Batman Begins, believe it or not, came out 20 years ago this year, which is very depressing. But
It
yeah,
is.
that's where my serious journey began. As I say, as a kid, Batman animated adventures, it was Spider-Man cartoon, it was, those types of things. But year one was definitely my formative my formative book.
Well, I'll have to reach back out to you and let you know how it goes after I get through the read. It seems like the 189 issue, there was a weird gap where
Hmm.
they broke it up, and it's sort of in between, if
Yeah,
I'm understanding correctly.
it's towards the end of this one. This includes Terrible 158 to 161, and then 163 to 191, as well as a what if book as well. So, but yeah, I
Yeah.
mean Miller's run. I mean, my favorite, absolute definitive favorite comic of all time is Dark Knight Returns. So when it comes to Frank Miller, he's had a big impact on me. But I would say though, and this may be slightly controversial, it's not my favorite Daredevil run.
Okay.
I'm
What
guessing
is?
this is the cover you were chatting about.
That's the cover. Yep.
For me, it is Mark Waid's run and Chris Samney
Okay.
and Paulo Rivera. And a lot of that comes from the fact that when I lived in Cambridge, as I say, I was going to Forbidden Planet for my pull list. And I was still more of a DC guy, but I started getting into Marvel. And it wasn't Avengers that got me into Marvel. It wasn't Spider-Man. It was Daredevil by Mark Waid and Paulo Rivera and Chris Samney. It was Hawkeye by Matt Fraction and David Aja. It was Miss Marvel by G. Willow Wilson. I liked all the Fringe books. I wasn't, as I say, I wasn't collecting Spider Man or reading Spider Man or Avengers or Captain America or anything like that. But that Mark Waid run to me is just, it's timeless. It's got its serious parts, but it's got moments of brevity, moments of humor, and the art is fantastic the whole way through. So yeah, I love Miller's run. Don't get me wrong; it's absolutely brilliant. But that Waid run, just that's what the Daredevil tattoos from. That's from the Waid Samney era.
Yeah, if I ever do the other sleeve, these are all memorial tattoos in our dogs on this arm. But if I
Hmm.
ever do the other sleeve, it'll be all Hanna-Barbera characters. So
Oh, I have
like
a mix
Grape
of it.
Ape and
I have
yeah.
a mix of everything at the moment. There's Naruto there, there's Daredevil, there's Batman there, there goes all the way up to Joker. But this is probably my favorite one here, though. My favorite director of all time is Alfred Hitchcock, and my son's named Alfred, so that's his year, date of birth, and name and stuff on the clapperboard. And then Dark Knight Returns there, of course, because there had to be Dark Knight Returns somewhere. Believe me.
See, this
Uh,
is not fair because you can pitch to your spouse, to your partner about needing to get more tattoos because it is directly related to the business. It's a write-off. I mean,
Absolutely.
if you
Look,
get
there it is.
somebody in the
There's
shop,
there's the Coffee
yeah,
and Heroes mug right there. And Watchmen as well, of course.
there you go.
Yeah, no, I try my best with that. I use that enough. I use my son now as a reason to buy really nice things because I say, "Oh, I'm buying them for him for his future. They're not for me." So yeah, I she lets me away with more than she probably should, to be honest. But all
Mine's the
good.
same. That's why you got to keep them.
Oh,
That's the
absolutely.
keeper.
Well, the thing was, I got Vicky into Saga. That was her sort of entry level comic because she really enjoyed Star Wars. So I said, "Oh, read this." I pitch Saga all the time to people and sort of Star Wars for adults because obviously it's adult themes and there's swearing and there's
Sure.
sex through it and this and that, but it's still got that great world building, that fantasy element, and that Romeo and Juliet element as well of people coming from two different races and coming together. So it's still a fantastic book, Saga. It's maybe not as potent as it once was, just because of how many it's inspired since, but it's still a fan. It would still be a firm favorite, I would say.
I'm very curious when young Alfred gets a little bit older and can kind of take his pick, what he ends up gravitating towards. Because, I mean, obviously, you can see behind me, there's a library, and when my son was younger, just seeing what he gravitated to is really interesting. Because I got him
Yeah.
started first on Bone,
Oh,
and
classic.
then let him kind of pick what he wanted from there, and he immediately locked onto DC characters. So he was really into Aquaman, and then he started sneaking Fables, and he was way too young to be reading Fables, and then it was Philadelphia. So he made these
That's quite the
big quick
escalation.
leaps, and he's like, well, he comes in and he's got Philadelphia open, and he definitely should not have been reading that. But there were questions from my wife about that one for sure. So I'm just saying there are landmines that you might have to answer questions about down the road.
If you ever want to go back and check out Philadelphia stuff, go back in our podcast feed. We interviewed Rodney Barnes one time, and we interviewed Jason Sean Alexander another time, and they were two
Oh,
great
cool.
guys to chat to. Yeah, big fan of Philadelphia as well, but maybe not for Alpha anytime soon. I basically got a back catalog of all the Mighty Marvel Masterwork stuff, and I've got Bone, and I've got DC Kid stuff, but Alfie's the kind of child. We dress him in a Batman hat but a Spider-Man hoodie, so he can make his own mind up between the big two. We won't force it on him too much.
Yeah, good on you. As long as you don't make him a Chelsea fan, we'll be fine.
Oh, he's no choice on that one, I'm afraid.
All right. Well, I encourage everyone to go follow the Coffee and Heroes YouTube channel. I'm going to put it in regular rotation. I'll drop a link in the show notes to make it easy for people so they can find it. Alan, thanks so much for coming on the show and
My
rounding out
pleasure.
my international comics perspective a little bit. I had no idea, especially about the distribution stuff and how all that worked. So it's been a pleasure. Thanks.
Yeah, happy to come on anytime and chat away.
All right. Well, this is Brian O'Neill, and on behalf of all of us at Comic Book Getty, thanks for tuning in, and we will see you next time. Take care, everybody.
Bye, guys.